very little background, kind of what are the main things you would say.
Okay. So basically, what is schistosomiasis?
Right. So schistosomiasis is a parasitic disease that you get from swimming in fresh water, and it inhabits your body and begins to produce eggs. And the eggs then migrate out through the urine or through the feces back into the fresh water, where the snail ingests it, and it matures there to the point that they develop new organisms that then can penetrate your skin if you swim in the water. So it's essentially a parasite. We call it a trematode parasite.
If you get schistosomiasis, what symptoms do people usually have?
So sometimes they don't have very many symptoms at all. So you can be almost asymptomatic. But when within about 6 weeks after you get the organism, there's a smaller group of people that get fever and headache and muscle aches and can get quite sick from it. And then they get over that, and the adult organisms then can live in your body for up to 25 years, just producing eggs for years and years. And that is pretty much asymptomatic until later in the disease, so 25 or 30 years out. The eggs that are supposed to go out in the urine and the feces sometimes get swept up into the liver and damage the liver. And so the people that die from schisto are usually people that get reinfected with huge numbers of organisms. The eggs go to the liver, they damage the liver to the point that you can't live because your liver's diseased.
And do you know the frequency of the mortality rates at all of schistosomiasis?
So from the acute disease, there's a small group of people that die during that acute fever episode that they have. And then the rest of the people that die after prolonged infection. It's hard to know the percent that die because there are millions of people that have this that never get to the point that their liver is damaged enough to kill them. So the percent of deaths is not all that great.
But what is your personal experience with schistosomiasis? What work have you done?
So we've done. We run a clinic here where we see returning travelers, and so we see people that have gone mainly to Africa and been swimming in fresh water. Some of those are just regular travelers. It's interesting that you must be able to get this disease in some other way besides just swimming in water, because about a third of people that get schistosomiasis don't have any history of swimming. So we see it also in LDS missionaries who are not allowed to swim, and they must get it this other way too. So it may be drinking water in rural areas. There just has to be another way to get it besides swimming.
So with LDS missionaries, and as globalization and traveling is more accessible, has there been an increase in schistosomiasis that you've seen here in Utah?
No, we probably see anywhere from 3 to 5 cases a year, and that's been pretty stable for 10 or 15 years. In the world, there's a problem. So if you look at Ghana, we work in Ghana where they have a lot of schistosomiasis. And they had a river that goes through Ghana that went down through, and schistosomiasis has a hard time living and running in the water. It lives much better with the snails that are in a lake. So they built a dam on the Volta River, and before they built that dam, around 2 to 5% of people in the area had schistosomiasis. And after they built the dam, and the lake was just there without fast-moving water, it went up to about 95% of people that had schistosomiasis. So sometimes we do things in life that are really good. The dam provided electricity, but it infected a lot of people with schistosomiasis.
Have you done any experience with, or have you done any research with schistosomiasis before?
We did. We have some villages just outside of Kumasi, Ghana, where we have looked for schistosomiasis. The kind that they have there is the kind that is passed out in the urine rather than the feces. So we did a study in the village where we work, and 41% of the people in that village had schistosomiasis in their urine.
What's the population of that village?
2,500 people.
Oh my gosh.
So this was quite a large group.
So we learned about like praziquantel as the main treatment. Did you want to like say any words about that, if you have an opinion about the drug, its effectiveness?
Sure. So the more we use it, the more we find out that it isn't always curative. So but it's the best medicine we have. So we use it. We follow the person then to see if they're cured. If they aren't cured, we retreat them. It works really well in people that never go back to become reinfected. But in the village where we work, the only place they have to swim and do their laundry is a little pond in their village. We call it Schistosoma Pond because that's where they're getting it. It's very, very hard for them because they keep getting reinfected.
What's the cost and availability of the praziquantel?
Pretty expensive here, but in Ghana, it's around $5 for a course of therapy.
And is it everywhere? Is it really accessible?
It is very accessible because they have a schistosoma. Their government has a schistosoma treatment program, so it's very easily available in Ghana.
We also were learning some other strategies at controlling schistosomiasis infection, included like kind of chemical warfare against the snails,
Right.
and sanitation education, as well as like chlorinating water.
Right.
How effective do you think those measures are?
So if you have lots of resources, they're really effective. But if you're in a little village in Africa, so one of the things we did is we took the village out to this pond and we took all of the brush that the snails live in and cleared the brush to see if that would decrease the chance of reinfection. And then if you think about this, the life cycle is it goes out in urine and then infects the snails. If you can just teach people not to pee in their pond, that would stop it from being spread also. So there are those kind of things. Using chlorine is great, but not very practical in a small village in Ghana.
So with trying to tell people, hey, let's stop peeing in this pond,
Right.
do you see schistosomiasis more with like a certain group, like children who don't have as well like hygiene habits and?
It is. So that would be the biggest risk group, and those are the people that go down there and swim in the pond. So usually kids from around 6 to 15, and so they also have the highest prevalence of organisms. And then if you get large numbers of schistosomiasis, then that's when you really get problems with your liver. So there are cases where they've opened up the blood vessels where these organisms live. Some people have had as many as 1,100 schistosoma organisms all making eggs. When you get that many organisms making eggs, you're more likely then to get damage to your liver.
Does replacement liver, does that help?
Yeah, it's too expensive for Africa, and that's where people are dying from this. So if we took somebody from the U.S. that wasn't infected in high numbers of organisms, they would probably never die from this disease. They may be fatigued, they may have some general symptoms that they don't understand, but dying from schisto would not be a very likely thing, even if it was never treated in people that came back that were never infected again. It's the people that are continually reinfected with large numbers of organisms that are really threatened with death.
Do Do you need to look at?
Giving so much up with this is great.
It's not schistosomiasis though, and like other parasitic diseases. They are not so much a worry, like for America and having the infection coming here. It's not something we really monitor for, is it? That we have to kind of keep track out.
The snails that carry this are not as available here. And then the other thing is we have sewage programs. If you flush the toilet, and then it never goes to the pond where you're going to go swimming. So once you develop a capable way of handling sewage, then this organism disappears. Mm-hmm. It's the places where you can't do that, or you don't have the facilities to do that. So we don't worry about it coming here. Originally, that's how it got here, though. So there are places in Central America and the Caribbean and the northern part of South America, and it came over with the slaves, and they had snails that provided the intermediate step, and so that's how it got to this hemisphere.
So do you think with the United States, do you think as a pollution and the overuse of water, do you think that will make the water quality maybe become infected with kind of how it is like in Africa and other places? Do you think our water condition can get that bad and have more people in the United States?
It would take a huge breakdown in our system to have that happen. We'd have to have a breakdown in sewage treatment and in water purification. So I think that would be really
Do you want to just ask this question finally and wrap up?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, we've also been studying along with our case projects in class about antibiotic-resistant bacteria, and our teacher was wondering about whether you think like parasitic infections or antibiotic-resistant bacteria is like a greater threat on the global scale to humanity.
On the global scale, the resistant bacteria are a much greater threat. They're a threat to all parts of the world. Schistosomiasis and most of the parasites are mainly in tropical areas where they don't have resources to handle things that will prevent them. The chance of resistant organisms causing trouble is a huge threat.
In the areas where there are the parasites, is it still antibacterial resistant what am I saying? Antibiotic. You understand what I'm saying?
Sure. Sure. So there are more in places like India where they are affluent enough that they use huge amounts of antibiotics. So a lot of the resistance is coming from countries that have enough money they can buy it, and where they don't have regulations to control the utilization of antibiotics. So if anybody can go down and buy an antibiotic, there's then a lot of misuse, and we're more likely to develop resistance.
All right.
Well, thank you so much for your time in this interview. We really appreciate it.
All right.
It's been really helpful as well.
Yeah, all of our questions you had an answer for. We weren't sure when we were drafting.